Welcome back to the California Conversation. I'm Tess Abraham. Governor Gavin Newsom insists that he is not anti-gun. He says that he respects the Second Amendment, that he supports gun ownership, and that all he wants is just common sense safety measures. And on paper, that sounds reasonable. However, policy is best judged not by intention, but by outcome. And so you can say that you're pro-gun all day long. However, if every single policy that you pass in your state makes it effectively harder for people to purchase and own guns, then really your words are meaningless. And so that brings us today to Glocks, one of the most common and widely used handguns across really the entire world, and how California is trying to effectively ban them for new buyers in 2026. We're going to get into all of it. But before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you stay up to date on all things California politics. And if you want more information or you want sources cited in compiling today's episode, then you should check out the corresponding article on my website, which is linked below. All right, so last week we talked about a couple of the new bills that were set to go into effect as of January 1st of this year. And you guys seem to really love that, talking about everything from banning plastic bags to save the environment, to then putting folic acid in tortillas, which, as we said, was absolutely wild. And so we're going to continue on that theme. And today I want to talk about an even crazier bill, one that's a little bit more serious for your life and mine, that is set to go into effect this July 1st. And that is a bill that is going to effectively ban Glocks. Now, let's back up for a second before we dive into that bill. What is a Glock? In case you don't know, in case you're unaware, what is it and what makes it popular among gun owners here in the United States? Well, a Glock is a semi-automatic handgun that is made by an Austrian company, and it's actually been around since the 1980s. And this is one of the most common choices for gun owners. The reasons for that is that Glocks are very reliable, so they're widely known to be able to shoot reliably in a wide range of conditions. They're also very simple and lightweight, making them perfect for first-time gun owners who maybe aren't as familiar with shooting a gun or as comfortable with that practice. It also means that it's easy to disassemble, it's easy to clean, it's easy to maintain. And then on top of that, one of the best features of it is that they're fairly affordable. And so guns can be expensive, but everyone should be able to own one if they so choose based on their constitutional rights. And so Glocks are just a great option all around. You can really think of a Glock like the Toyota Corolla of the car market. So in the same way that a Corolla, it's not flashy, it's not luxurious by any means. There are many other cars that are more sporty or have a lot more features in it, but it's reliable, it's safe, it's standardized. You know that if something goes wrong, you'll be able to get a replacement part. You know that people typically would know how to be able to function a Toyota Corolla. And so that's a Glock. It's not flashy or luxurious, but it gets the job done in a reliable way. And so that's why 65% of the market share for law enforcement is Glocks. This is the number one choice among police officers and other law enforcement in the type of handgun that they want to use and carry. And then alongside that, it's also one of the most popular models among just everyday citizens who are also gun owners. But of course, if people like something and it actually improves their lives, then the California government has to find a way to ban it. And that brings us to AB 1127. Assembly Bill 1127 makes it so that no new Glocks can be sold in California starting July 1st of 2026. Now, it's important to note this bill doesn't specifically say the word Glock. It doesn't call out the brand by name. But what it does do is it calls out semi-automatic handguns or pistols that have the potential for conversion into fully automatic weapons. Let me break down what that means. So basically, a Glock by design is not fully automatic. I explained it's semi-automatic. What that means is that it shoots or fires one bullet per trigger pull. So you have to pull the trigger, that will release a bullet, and then you would have to pull it again if you want to shoot a second time. Now, a fully automatic weapon is something like a machine gun. And with that, if you pull the trigger, it has a mechanism so that it will continuously fire bullet after bullet. And so that's what makes it fully automatic. It just automatically will shoot. And typically something like a machine gun is seen as a lot more deadly of a weapon, a lot more dangerous. And those have been outlawed even from a federal level for several decades. So a Glock on its own, by its very own design, is not a fully automatic weapon. If you just buy a Glock as it comes, then you will have to pull the trigger each time that you want to shoot a bullet. However, as with anything, criminals or people who want to be able to manipulate weapons can find a way to make them more dangerous. And so because of that, there's something called a Glock switch that exists. And this is a little piece that is about the size of a quarter. It's very small, and it fits on the back of the slide mechanism of the gun. And what that does is it basically retrofits it so that if you pull the trigger, that it will shoot multiple rounds in the same way that a machine gun would, or like a fully automatic weapon. So basically, what the bill says is it's targeting guns like a Glock, where it has the potential to be converted into a fully automatic weapon through the use of something like a Glock switch. And so the goal of this bill is to make sure that guns like this, that have this quote unquote potential, can no longer be sold in California. And so advocacy groups like Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense or Everytown for Gun Safety are really arguing that certain handguns like a Glock are designed so that it is far too easy to basically DIY your own automatic weapon manufacturing. And so they argue that these guns are more deadly just by design and by their very nature, and therefore shouldn't be sold because it makes it, again, just way too easy for anyone to turn them into a very deadly weapon and then use them in certain scenarios like mass shootings, which is ultimately what they want to reduce. Supporters of this bill also reference the fact that the ATF has recovered 31,000 of these conversion devices like the Glock switch just in the past 5 years. And so they're saying even if the gun on its own is not fully automatic, that these conversion devices are abundant, that they are able to be accessed easily. And so we need to just remove the guns because we need to only allow guns that could not be converted into a fully automatic weapon. And I just want to pause here. Before we dive further into an analysis of this bill, I want to level set that I hear the very real concern of groups like these and of advocates for this bill. The concern is that gun violence is just continuing, that it is on the rise across our nation, and we don't want our young people, our youth, to be involved in gang activity with guns. We don't want people to become mass shooters. We want to stop seeing these types of incidents in the media. We don't want children to be afraid to go to school. We don't want people to be afraid to go to church. All of these very real concerns. And that's valid. It's a very admirable type of pursuit to say, I want to work to reduce gun violence across my state and across my nation. I don't think that intention is wrong. However, like I mentioned at the top of the show, policy is judged not by intention. Policy is judged by outcome. And so if we really want to work to reduce gun violence, then we need to make sure that the laws that we are passing and the bills that we are proposing in our legislature are actually going to be effective to achieve that goal. Because if we pass ineffective bills, if we pass bills that are not going to achieve that stated purpose, then what happens is that becomes a barrier to progress. And so you might really want the goal of decreasing gun violence, but as long as you pursue these policies that are not going to actually do that in effect, then you are going to be blocked from actually getting to the root cause of the problem and to passing policies and bills that actually will address that root cause to give you the outcome that you're looking for. So I say all of that to say, I don't look at a bill like AB 1127 and think, oh, this is just ridiculous. We're talking about guns. Again, gun violence is real. And I think that, again, it's an admirable pursuit. But we need honesty. And so we need to reject any Band-Aid fixes that just sound good, like they're doing something, but in actuality are not going to achieve that desired goal. And I believe that AB 1127 is very much a Band-Aid fix. Let me explain why. The devices that turn Glocks into a fully automatic weapon are already illegal. They are already not allowed to be manufactured or sold in California. And so we have already recognized these devices that will change a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon as bad. We've already recognized them as we don't want these. That's why the ATF is recovering them all across the nation, is because they are outlawed and so they should not be in use. So when we look at that, then we see honestly that the problem is not that there's not a law in place to stop this kind of action, to stop creating handguns into automatic weapons. The problem is enforcement. The problem is that there is a law in place and people are willing to break that law. And so now we need to turn our efforts not toward putting more and more laws on what you can and can't own, but rather on enforcing the laws that we've already decided are good and that we've already said should be in place, like not being able to own or operate with a Glock switch. But AB 1127 doesn't focus on that problem. AB 1127 focuses on the base gun itself. But the gun is not the problem, because if you just buy a Glock, like I said before, as it comes, or you just build a Glock the way that it is designed, then you will see that it is not an automatic weapon and that you cannot achieve the same level of lethality that you could with a machine gun or a fully automatic weapon. And so the gun, the Glock by design, is not the problem. The problem is the illegal piece that then converts it. And that is already outlawed by its very nature. But unfortunately, this is a pattern that we see in California, where when enforcement for a law becomes difficult, our legislature then moves to outlawing more and more legal behavior. But let's just think about this logically for a second. Okay, if you add laws, you are only going to affect law-abiding citizens. And so the very people that you are then going to change the lives of are the people who are obeying the laws that you put in place. But we have seen, because the ATF is recovering these devices, they're still being used nationwide. Who is using these? People who are okay with breaking the law, because they already know that there's a law in place. They already know that these devices are hard to obtain because they are not allowed under our laws. And so knowing that, they are fully comfortable with breaking the law. So then it follows, if we think logically, that by adding more and more laws, you are not going to stop this behavior, because this is criminal behavior. And so now you are just piling on regulations, you're piling on requirements, you're taking away capabilities of law-abiding citizens, but you are not actually going to affect the criminal behavior, because that has to be stopped by enforcement. It is so ridiculous. This is like banning knives because some people use them to go and stab other people, and we would say that that's bad. And so no one is allowed to have a knife. Well, the problem is that the people who want to stab people will just find a way to get knives, to have access to them through illegal means. But now cooks and chefs and average people who want to cook in their kitchen no longer have access to them. We just don't get them because some people use them to stab others. That wouldn't make sense. Or it's like saying we are going to ban cell phones because some people text when they drive. Well, the problem's not the cell phone. The problem is that some people are comfortable breaking the law that says don't text and drive. And unfortunately, those people who are comfortable breaking the law will then be comfortable to break the new law that says no cell phones. Well, they will just keep their cell phone. But then the majority of the population will lose access to their ability to have a cell phone. So it just doesn't make any sense. It's insane, it's ridiculous, and it's just, again, taking away a very reasonable option from most of the population and will not change anything about what criminals are able to and willing to do. And here's the real kicker about it. Laws are not neutral. We can't just pass laws just in case. We can't say, if the logic is, well, if we just make this type of gun illegal, then it will reduce the number of guns that are maybe in our state. And so by that nature, it will reduce gun violence. And so even if it doesn't target the specific root cause of what's going on with gun violence, at least it might just in case make things better. So we're just going to pass it. We're just going to see how it goes. We can't do that with laws because, like I said, laws have an impact. Laws change. They quite literally change what you and I are allowed to do. And so laws don't stay just neutral. They're going to have an impact one way or another. And this is especially important when those laws are going to change or restrict access to your constitutional rights. And so we see that AB 1127 is not targeting the group of people that is actually causing problems with Glocks or this type of gun. Those people who are using converters, who are using Glock switches, those people are going to continue doing that. And so it's really just affecting average, everyday, law-abiding citizens. But this is to completely ignore reality, because it's to ignore the fact that there are criminals and that what the nature of criminals is. It creates this fantasy world that, again, says, we'll just take away all guns and then there will be no crime. It will be fantastic, as if it worked that way. If you ban certain types of guns, if you outlawed all guns, there would still be gun violence. Do you know why? Because criminals would still have access to guns because they are willing to break the law. But now you would take away guns, and with this bill, you will take away this type of gun from the law-abiding citizens who then need to be able to protect themselves against the criminals. So you're creating a group of people who are incredibly vulnerable, who have no ability to defend themselves, while you are not targeting enforcing the laws against the people who are comfortable just breaking them. It's insane. It's a complete mess. And we should be especially outraged about Glocks because this is taking away a reliable, a simple, and affordable option from Californians. This means that it is going to hurt first-time gun owners who want a simple gun to be able to use as a home defense system. This is going to hurt women who want to be able to own a gun for self-defense, but they want something that is easy to use, that is lightweight, and that they can feel comfortable firing if they should need to. This is going to hurt lower-income Californians who can't afford an extravagant gun or something that is more expensive. And so you're hurting all of these groups of people in your state just to end up producing no results. And really, let's be honest about that. Like I said before, if you want to achieve the end goal of less gun violence, we need to be realistic about what this bill is going to do. And we see that this bill is it is not going to reduce gun violence. It is only going to hurt law-abiding Californians, is only going to take away their options. And the same problems that are in place now are just going to continue, or they're just going to get worse. So we shouldn't want this bill to pass. We shouldn't be comfortable with it going through our legislature, and we shouldn't be comfortable with the fact that our governor signed it. It's lunacy. Real solutions to these problems would look like empowering law enforcement to go after the people who are selling these conversion devices, to go after the importers and the online sellers and even the 3D print distributioners, because that has become a big problem with people 3D printing these illegal devices. We should empower our police officers to conduct investigations into these groups to stop the sale of these and the ability to create these devices even from the outset, because they're already illegal. And then on top of that, as with most things, we need to increase penalties for offenders so that we actually deter crime. We need to show people that if you get into this business, or if you use a Glock switch or some type of converter, that you will be severely punished because this is illegal, this is dangerous, and so we are not going to allow for this. Those are solutions that would actually start to address the problems rather than we're just going to do a blanket gun ban. So why does this matter? Why do I get so passionate about this? Why is this a topic you should care about regardless of if you own guns or like guns or not? Why does this matter for you and for me? I really want us to understand that every new law has a cost, and we have to make sure with every law that is passed that the cost is outweighed by the actual tangible benefits, by the fact that the law will be effective in making our lives better in one way or another that is necessary. It could be very tempting with a niche law like this to think it's just one type of gun. Who cares? There's other guns that you can buy, and so I just can't be bothered with it. But we shouldn't be passive or apathetic to a bill like AB 1127, because again, this affects real people's lives and it will not have the proven outcomes that it says that it will. Symbolic laws feel really good because it's easy to say we did something, especially with something like gun violence where everyone says we need to do something. It's easy for our governor and for the legislature to say, look, we're taking steps. We've passed this many laws about guns and we've outlawed them. Symbolic laws feel good, but they're bad. They're bad because they hurt the wrong people and they don't actually fix the problem. Only effective laws are the ones that will do the hard work of getting at those root causes of what's going on and actually addressing them to make your life better. And that is what we should demand from our lawmakers. And as I said before, when something concerns a constitutional right, we should be extra guarded about wanting to pass it if it's going to take away those rights, because our constitutional rights are not suggestions. They are guaranteed to us under our Constitution, and this one under the Second Amendment. And so the burden of proof shouldn't be on you and me. I shouldn't be sitting here having to argue why you and I should have a right in California to own a Glock. That shouldn't be my responsibility. The burden of proof should be on the government to show why this restriction is necessary, why it is the only thing that is necessary in order to stop the gun violence. They should have to prove that it is narrowly tailored, that it will be effective, and that it is highly specific. That's the legal precedent. That's the standard that's used in courts, usually when it comes to something like this. And so they need to prove, again, that there is no other solution that they could enact in order to stop this problem. But the problem is that there are other solutions that we just talked about. And so this is too sweeping of a ban. This does restrict constitutional rights in a way that will not be for the benefit of most Californians. And so we cannot let this go on undetected and with saying nothing, because if we let the government strip away our rights slowly, in what seems just like one law here, one law there, if we let them do that without some measurable benefit, some outcome that they can prove to us, then really we don't have any rights at all, because we have just surrendered to the fact that we have whatever rights our government says that we have, and we're just okay with that. But that is not what our Constitution says. Our rights are inalienable. They are not given by government. They are given by God. And so we need to fight to protect them and stop the governmental overreach from creeping into our lives, again, without that legal precedent, that standard that says this is necessary. So whether or not you are a gun owner, whether or not you even like guns, AB 1127 should outrage you, because this is what it looks like for a state government to pass, quite frankly, lazy laws, and to pass laws that are not going to have any tangible benefit for the people that they are given in order to govern. And we should not stand for that. And if you're someone who has ever considered owning a Glock in California, consider this as your heads up, because in just a matter of months, that will no longer be an option here in our state. Not because this law has been proven that it will actually stop crime, but because our lawmakers have decided that it is far easier to just restrict more and more lawful behavior than it is to actually face the issue head on. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope it was helpful for you as you navigate life in our state, and that you even learned something new. If you loved this show, please spread the word and share it with your friends, your family, and your fellow Californians. And I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the California Conversation.